So last year, Europe was an injustice, the likes of which I've never seen. But this year, it was all about revenge. And boy, have I got some in store for you. Oh, that and we're defensively insane. Right now, over on stream, we are, of course, doing the summer transfer window, dealing with comfortably the largest budget we've had at any point in this safe, by a considerable amount. So you're going to want to drop on by after this to catch up on all the action. And the VODs of all the streams can, of course, be found on the second channel, which is linked in the description, along with a link to the live streams. Later in the video, I even have a little treat that the stream watchers won't have even seen yet, but more on that later. And also coming up on YouTube this week, I do have some more content outside of this. Apologies that it's been a little while since the analysis video. I've just been working on some stuff that requires a little bit more time, so thank you for your patience. But for now, unlike last season of Building a Nation with MTK Budapest in Hungary, we entered this one full of complete certainty. We were dealing with a much larger budget that we could finally start to use to bring some players in that could really strengthen this squad, a squad that was already massively strong. But let's jump in to the transfer talk, everybody's favorite part, but starting with the players that have left the club this season. First up is Adrian Kapralic, the Slovakian international who's left us to go join Al Ain for £1.4 million. This was not really a planned transfer. We'd forgotten entirely that he actually had a release clause, and thus when it was triggered, there was literally nothing we could do about it, especially when they're offering him 20 grand a week. Next up was Ziad Larkesh, a player whose footballing time with us had been reduced quite a lot lately, so I figured the best thing to do would be to move him on. £325,000. He gets to go back to France, to Brest, and have a lovely old time there. Next up was a January sale of Jonathan Emmanuel Sagdal, our young Norwegian right-back talent, and you might think, why on earth would you get rid of him? And the simple fact is, his football again had been reduced over the last season or so, with other players emerging, the likes of Emmanuel Dala. And when Ferencváros decided that they were interested in him, I decided that for the best of the league and for him, it would be nice if we just sold him for whatever they wanted. So the first bid they put in was £1.3 million. We accepted that. He gets to move, gets himself a nice wage bump, and now he's playing regularly week in, week out. The last of the paid outs was Aurelian Marti. Now, you may remember me talking about him in last year's video, where I discussed how brilliantly he'd done for our under-19 squad and how the plan was basically to try and bring him up to the first team, either get him some games or get him a loan move. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out that way. Almost the second he was moved up into the first team, we suddenly started having a lot of large Italian sides circling trying to get his signature, and then he basically threw a 6-month strop. If someone's interested, let's see if we can take them for a ride. And with moments left in the window, Porto came in with a small bid of, I believe, £300,000, and we just started bidding them up to see what they'd actually go for. In the end, they agreed to a transfer of 3.2 million, rising to 3.3 million, if I recall, in the end, for a player that had literally only played 2 matches for us and a few matches for our second tier side, which we were then able to parlay into a transfer which I'll show you later on, and I believe it's a really important one. The loan farm once again was in full swing. You'll notice the insane amount of loans. We'll actually catch up on some of the stats of these players later in the video, but you can see that we really have been pushing more and more players out on loan. One of our loan players, of course, Regan Booty, even scored goal of the month at one point. Sort of. Must be the Booty goal, right? What a fucking goal, But now the real fun part. Let's talk about transfers in. It might be a bit less than last time, and as always, we'll gloss over a couple of them, but I feel like there's been some much more marquee signings this year round. I think players that really do help us out a lot. First of whom was Felix Peter, the young French goalkeeper brought in on a free transfer from the Amateur League. Next was more of a meme signing in Xavier Lethbridge-Cattell II, who we picked up from Chalfont Wasps over in the UK. Mostly signed him so that he can prove his daddy wrong, that actually he can forge a career in football. And we are rooting for you, Xavier. Next is this absolute dreamboat. The player I sort of alluded to at the end of the last season, where I said we'd sign a guy from a Hungarian side. Well, this is him. This is András Puskás. You can't really not sign a player called Puskás, but look at those mentals and technicals. His physicals are still going to come a long way, hopefully, but there's a hell of a quality player in here. We paid 600 grand for Debrecen for this guy. He's been out on loan with them this season, maybe even next season as well, given that he's getting regular game time in the top flight, and Debrecen have had a really solid season. The first of the big signings for me. This is Miguel Angel Montiel. He is a Paraguayan international now. He wasn't when we signed him, but 3 caps for Paraguay already. We spent £850,000, and that's actually the total deal. It's actually with some installments as well. He is ridiculous. 16 heading, 15 marking, 16 tackling. He's fast. He may only be 5'11", but he has 14 jumping reach, so he more than makes up for it as well with a bit of speed. Good on both feet. Ridiculous player for us this season. Then there's Christian Leon, £235,000 for the Spaniard coming in from Villanovense. He's not fantastic, but he still has some decent attributes. Worth the money, I would say. Not on a huge amount of money, and he's gone out on loan to Kishvala, and thus he's helping the loan farm. But now, the big ones. First up, Alberto Melero, another Real Madrid cast-off. Look at the state of him. The fact that he was willing to talk to us is actually mental. We brought in, again, a load of trials to see if they'd join other Hungarian sides, and he was just part of that batch because it was a name we recognised. And then when we saw his attributes, it almost felt too good to turn down. So that's exactly what we did. We offered him a contract. He is on 12.75k a week, making one of our highest paid players, and it did end up with Brahim Diaz getting a wage bump clause as part of his contract that he already has, the match highest earner, but we were willing to do it to bring Melero in. He's had a solid season, but I think he has underperformed in certain areas this year, particularly on the assist side of things. I think he could have had a few more assists, but he's still been a fantastic player and still only 24 years old. An absolute rocket of a player. Scored one insane free kick as well. What a player. Luckily, later in the season, we were actually able to agree a brand new contract with Brahim Diaz that saw him drop his wage, incredibly, and got rid of his match highest earner clause. So he's now here for another 3 years. This is Juan Alvarado, a Honduran international. You notice that he's got 42 caps already at the age of 20. An absolutely stunning centre-back. Now, ignore the red arrows. It's just because we've played a lot of games lately. Now, the weird thing with him is that originally we were interested, and so were PSG. They didn't actually put a bid in, but we tried to sign him. Fee was the same, all that jazz. He wanted star player, he wanted his own parking spot, he wanted to be named president of the universe, the usual kind of crap that you just can't agree to. A month later, in the window, PSG were no longer interested in him, for whatever reason. Presumably they signed someone else. So we decided to go back in again. And all of a sudden, he was willing to agree to a regular starter contract on 5.5k a week, without any kind of real bonuses on top of that. So we were more than happy to bring Big Juan in with his 18 jumping reach, which was 19. What you doing, Juan? Get with the program, buddy. Point is, absolutely astonishing signing. Really, really like him. Can play a bit at left back if we desperately needed him to, but the fact that we got him and Montiel in the same season to join Flavian Moores, Omgbar, and all those other guys, that's a lot of quality in the centre-back department. Next was Diego Cruz for just under £500,000 from Peru. He now has 2 caps for Peru as well. He quite literally got that first cap the moment he signed for us, so that's why he's got a slightly higher wage. But I do think there's a quality player here, potentially for the future, and particularly for that kind of money. He's just sort of fallen behind the pecking order a little bit this season. Maybe could do with even a loan spell for next season. Then there's Chris Ellis, a player we'd looked at from Colombia for a little while. He's an American international, but had been playing at Deportivo Cali. Originally, he wasn't going to talk to us, and then I noticed that his contract had completely expired. So I figured, why not try to pick him up? £9 a week he's on, but I feel like he's the type of guy that we could definitely flip to another country or another team relatively quickly and make some good money on the transfer. Next up, though, is our record signing to date. This is Yoshitaka Nakanishi, or we just call him Yoshi, because of course we would do. Now, he is a bit of a strange one. Now, unfortunately, his development has been a little bit stunted this year due to 2 injuries that have kept him out for 6-7 weeks at a time, unfortunately. But £1.3 million was the cost. It was his release clause, and I still stand by it. Now, the plan with him is actually not to play him as a left back or a left wing back in any way. The plan with Yoshi here is that we've actually noticed that he could be quite a good roaming playmaker because he has solid passing, which can improve, and really nice vision. And I think he kind of, other than the long shots, ticks a lot of the boxes for playing as that roaming playmaker for us because he can do a little bit of both. If he can just stay off the injury table, he'll be fantastic. Not injury prone or anything. I think just a little bit unlucky. I think there's a hell of a player here. Now, I mentioned in the outs that we got rid of Aurelian Marti, and that allowed us to finance one more deal in that same window. And let's show you that player. And this is he. This is Guillermo Navarro. £1.1 million from Deportivo Saprissa over in Costa Rica. Weird that this is Uruguay, though. Is that the name of their, B team or something? That's kind of sick. But needless to say, yeah, £6.5 a week. He's got 19 caps for Costa Rica already, only 19 years old. The idea really with Navarro is that he could be the long-term successor to someone like Brahim Diaz. And it means that when Diaz finally sort of starts to age out of the side, probably, we'll have the likes of Navarro and Puskás to play in that role. And those two could absolutely tear things up for us. He's already banged 5 goals and 5 assists for us this season, which with barely any real game time. And I think there's a really, really quality player here. He just kind of ticks all the boxes for me, and I absolutely love this guy to death. So massively happy to get this signing over the line. So tactically, we haven't changed anything this year. It's been the exact same stuff as before. But what I would say is it does seem to be working extraordinarily well now, as you'll see later on in the video. The point being, if you do want this tactic, I'm going to make a proper video about it at some point soon. But if you want it early, just head over to Stream Chat and just type in !tactic and you can get a download for it. Try it out for yourself. And speaking of that, it's time to talk about the league. And this season has been quite ridiculous. We started off basically flawlessly in the league. Just an absolute sea of green in there too. You'll also notice a 6-0 hammering of Ferencváros in the derby. They got 2 red cards, and Ehring and Melero were able to contribute themselves both, well, 2 goals from Melero and 4 for Josef Ehring, who's had one of the best seasons I've ever seen out of a player. But you'll also notice here a distinct lack of goals being conceded. That's going to be a theme. Astonishing. Over the start of this season, there was a period of, I believe, 17 matches where we conceded 1 goal over the first 17 games of the season. Real Virginia kept 16 clean sheets in 17 17 games. So much so that Arsenal came snooping for him. They were £300,000 away from triggering his release clause, but they didn't do it, and as a result of that, he then signed a new contract which removed the release clause, and Arsenal missed out on an absolute worldie of a goalkeeper, so bravo them. And after just 16 matches, we'd won all 16 of them and were already 17 points clear at the top of the league, which was utterly ridiculous. This season, we just absolutely flew away. Josef Ehring had already got 17 goals. Despite not being top scorer at that point, we were just on one. It literally took until the 23rd of February for us to drop any points this season, and it was a 1-1 draw away at Kisvárda, where Raymond Krollis, on loan from us, scored the bloody equaliser in this game with their only shot of the game, if I recall. And we finished off the rest of the season exactly as you would expect. Absolutely flawlessly. Just wins, 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 wins. This is some of the most consistent football I think I've ever made a team play in FM, especially so early in a save. Like, we had seasons a little bit like this with Treaty, but not till like 25 seasons into the save when our team was truly stacked against our opponents who couldn't play their lone players against us. That's not the case here. We just seem to have some insane tactical setup that just seems to be working so well. We'll probably never do this again, but it's just insane to see it work so well. And in the end, we had 97 points to win the title. 97 points in the end. Ferencváros finishing 28 points behind us. We won every single match but one. We were so close to the perfect season. I've never managed it in one of these saves, and we were this close in season 6, which genuinely still astounds me, but there you go. You'll also notice, of course, Kisvárda in there as well with the Europa League spot this time around. Újpest and Molfehérvár in there as well. In total, if you wanted to see it, it was 100 goals scored and only 7 conceded in 33 games. I've never had a single-digit concession season, I don't think. Not even when we were so dominant. So I'm really, really going to take that. I think we might have seasons in the future where we score more goals, but I don't think we'll ever be as strong defensively as we have been this season. Speaking of this and all this loveliness, how did that then translate into Europe? Since I said that it was a season of revenge, what did that mean? The first of those was FK Partizan, and we beat them in the end by 5-2 on aggregate. We were very fortunate to win 3-1 in Serbia, but then kind of balance things out with a lovely little home win by 2-0, and it really did show. We beat them by 8-2 on aggregate, a 5-1 victory over in Norway, followed by a 3-1 victory at home with Pereira, Ehring and Malero grabbing the goals. Noah Jean-Holm could do nothing about it, and we sailed through to our second consecutive Champions League phase. Now, due to us still having a relatively low coefficient in the grand scheme of things, we were handed a fairly tough set of matches, but the easiest ones were Trabzonspor away and Karabag at home, and we felt that if we could just get a win against someone else or earn 3 points somewhere around there might still be a chance for us to gut top 24. Boy, did we start well. Travelling to Turkey in our first game, a beautiful 4-0 hammering. Pereira, 2 goals from Ehring and 1 late penalty from Moses Jarge, who gave us a 4-0 trashing, but it was the next game when Europe really sat up and took a bit of notice of MTK Budapest. We travelled to Salzburg to play against Red Bull Salzburg and hammered them 4-0. Back-to-back 4-0 wins away from home in the Champions League. Effie's goal, I'm just gonna let us talk about it. I'm certain that's what happened. Please change the angle. Look, he flicks this up. Up it comes. Bang. One absolutely thunderous strike, but then it was compounded with Pereira and then 2 more from Josef Ehring, giving us 8 goals and 0 goals conceded so far in our first 2 matches. We got brought right back down to earth, though, by Real Madrid, who's they absolutely hammered us. A hat-trick from Romelu Lukaku. Wesley Fofana got one as well. We ended up having to sim, instant result the final 30 minutes of the game because we had such insane graphical issues, because I think there's some performance issues in the latest version of FM, but only seems to affect Champions League games, weirdly. But needless to say, not a good result for us, but we weren't really expecting much. Particularly as next, though, we had to travel to the Emirates to play Arsenal. Not what you really need, and it was also our 4th away match in 5, but we had other ideas. 2 goals in the first 10 minutes of the match from Josef Ehring, followed up with a lovely strike from Effie, which generated this. Effie's run is so good, though. Just arrives, opens his body out, bang. Top bins. Which will be why you're seeing Beng in the chat so much lately. That's a whole different story. Miggy then added a 3rd goal before half-time. Arsenal massively woke up in the second half of this game, as you can see from the statistics in the bottom left-hand corner. But João Virginia, including saving a penalty in this game, had genuinely one of the best goalkeeping performances I've ever seen. Despite letting in 2 goals to Gabriel Jesus, he also made one of the best double saves I've ever seen on FM. Oh, for God's sake. What a save! I cannot believe what I've just seen. Next up was the easiest game of the bunch, although we did fall behind very, very early on. Igor Delibasic, our 4th choice goalkeeper, had to play this one due to an injury, but Brahim Diaz, Malero, Montiel and Pereira gave us the goals that gave us yet another victory in the Champions League, our 4th victory of the tournament. And just when you thought it couldn't get any better, Sporting came to town and we dispatched them. Moors, Ehring and Ari with 3 goals to just put them to bed. We then travelled to Portugal to face their domestic rival Porto and got a 1-1 draw there as well. Zapata gave them the lead. Ehring immediately equalised for us, but honestly, both teams could have had at least 3 goals each in this game. It was an absolutely mad one where once again, Joao Virginia put and allowed all the stops, another 9 saves from him. And it was actually directly after the Arsenal game that they started being interested in him. And really, if I was Arsenal, I'd have taken him. But of course, they didn't, did they? Our poorest performance of the whole tournament, though, came at home against RB Leipzig. Alessio Zerbin and Evan Ndicka's goals were able to dispatch us very easily. Malero had an absolute mare, and he was prone to that every now and then this season. We just weren't up to it, but it didn't matter, as we were still able, with that result, to secure ourselves a place in the top 8. All of that madness left us qualifying 6th, with 5 wins out of 8 and just the 2 defeats to Real Madrid and RB Leipzig in there too. 16 points on the board, 6th place. But the moment we saw PSG qualify in 9th place, we immediately knew that it was probably going to be them that we placed in the, well, not the next round, but the round after, because we got to skip around. And would you believe it? I was right. We were not going to be beaten that easy. Oh no. PSG got 2 very good early goals from Martinez and Kylian Mbappe, and we kind of just thought, right, well, this has kind of had it at this point. But it wasn't over at all. We were playing fantastically well, and we're definitely matching them pound for pound in this game, if not better. Then, with 25 minutes to go, Novak got us back into the match. Unfortunately, though, with just 7 minutes to go, Emmanuel Dala was sent off for a second yellow, and at that point, we kind of figured with 10 men, we've got no hope. And then this happened. Maybe it's a chance for us. Ehring's through. The Ehring cupboard is in. Yes! Come on! I take it back. I take it all back now. It's PSG 2. 10-man MTK Budapest 2. The Ehring cupboard has packed your towels away. Yeah. So a cheeky little 2-2 draw at the Parc des Princes. We were feeling very, very confident because I would argue we were the better side in this game, and that takes some doing. Unfortunately, it wasn't quite to be said for the next match, as we were comfortably dispatched 3-0 at home, with Musiala, Martinez and Mbappe scoring 3 goals for them before 13 minutes had even elapsed. We then had a red card after 26, and it had all gone a little bit wrong. But to even reach this round was extremely impressive for us, to reach the round of 16 in only our 2nd season in the Champions League. We probably won't do this again for another couple of years, so it's nice to see that we were capable of it, and we played bloody well in that first leg. You never know what could have happened on a different day, but at the end of the day, they're PSG. So that was our story. What about the other teams in Europe? Because this year, it was a bit different. Budapest were our competitors in the Europa League this season by virtue of their wonderful league finish, and they did manage to coast through the first round of qualifying against Rijeka, but sadly that was then brought to a halt in the second round against Rangers, where despite winning one of the games, they then went out on penalties in the end, which is a bit of a shame for them. But then in the playoff for the Conference League, they met Maccabi Tel Aviv, and despite losing the home game, were able to get themselves through to the group stages of the Conference League, which is very good news. Vasas were sadly not anywhere near as lucky in the Conference League, as they drew against Red Star and were dispatched home and away to bin them out of Europe very quickly. We hope to avoid that sort of stuff in future. Ferencváros fared a lot differently though, hammering Alashkert 6-0 on aggregate to coast through to the next round. 4 draws at home and away against Djurgården of Sweden allowed them to sneak through to the final round on penalties, where they then met Standard Liège of Belgium in the playoff round, and it took a late Christian Kouame goal to see them sneak themselves through to the group stage as well. So that meant that we were, of course, in the Champions League with Budapest and Ferencváros both in the Conference League groups, and that could only mean one thing: lots and lots of chances. Relatively good results for both of them in the league phase of the Conference League saw them both actually only lose 1 game between them. Ferencváros with just the 2 wins and the 4 draws, and Budapest with the 2 wins, 3 draws, and just the 1 defeat. But that's still not bad out of 12 matches, and lots of extra points for the coefficient. Ferencváros were able to comfortably coast past Astana by 2-1, although there was some little scares in there, and Budapest were even more dominant against Donetsk Streda, winning 4-1 on aggregate to progress to the next round of the tournament. Unfortunately, it was at this point where they got some extremely tough draws, as Ferencváros were placed up against Leicester City, losing 1-0 both home and away to crash out of Europe. Budapest suffered a similar fate against Olympiacos, losing 2-0 and then 2-1 to crash out as well. But they still gained us a lot of extra coefficient points, and that is exactly what we needed this season, as all of that goodness gained us 13.75 points. Comfortably our best season, in fact, nearly 3 points better than our best year. And next year, we're getting rid of the lowest year on the setting, so there's a real chance that we can make huge gains. But the point is, we're 13th for next year, but this year, we're going to move up to 10th, if that makes sense. As in, we'll be 13th for next year, and then in theory, the year after that, we'll be 10th based on what we've done this year. And getting to top 10 so soon is just staggering for us. I'm really, really pleased. Now, we would have technically had 9th if it wasn't for the fact that Scotland had one of the best seasons in recent memory, getting 17.6 points. I think they were the 3rd or 4th best nation in Europe, or certainly bloody close to it, as that will mean we'll get a guaranteed group stage spot for the Champions League and all the guaranteed cash that comes with it. It will also allow us to speed up some of the progress, because we won't have to do an entire stream full of qualifying games. So there is that as well. The 9th place would have been good, as it could have moved people up a little bit of a round, but still, we have 5 teams in Europe, and our sights are looking up, really. The next big step, I suppose, is to get towards 6th. That's going to take a couple of seasons, I suspect. But still, the other Hungarian sides are really doing us proud at the moment. If they can continue to do that and strengthen as they continue to get European success and money, then I think we're really on the right track, because they are doing some mad things with their signings. It's fantastic. So the youth intake. Last year's was a bit crap, but we had great ones before, and we hope for better things this season. hope being the optimum word there. Sadly, it did not turn out that way. These were the only 4 players that were even worth bringing to the club after that. Roland Bakos being the king of them, allegedly. He's fine. Like, he's good, but he's never going to see the light of day in our squad, sadly. It's just, yeah, he has a higher potential ceiling than the others. So I mentioned that I had a little treat for you lot that I don't think most of the stream watchers have actually even seen yet, because they would have had to have seen it in the Discord, and that is this. The board has decided to build a new stadium. It's all very vague. They don't know where it is, how much it's going to cost, whether it's even going to have a roof or anything. So I guess in about 10 years, we'll find out if there's actually going to be a stadium. I dread to think how much this damn thing's going to cost. We need to make a lot of money in the meantime, because they could do some silly shit otherwise. From a stats point of view, I mean, you can see this. Eric, 55 goals in 49 appearances in total, of an XG of 44. Like, he still had a stupidly high XG as well to go with it. Brahim Diaz, 18 goals and 16 assists. I think that might be his best ever season for us in front of goal. Malero with 14 goals is very solid as well, just about over his XG. Pereira's right on that as well. The one thing Malero let himself down, I think, was on his assists. You can see Pereira with 24 and then Malero on 7. He definitely does need to contribute a few more assists to really be considered in that top draw. But I do just want to quickly highlight this using the goalkeeper analysis view. This is João Virginia's season. He's prevented 21 goals more than he's expected to this season. His goalkeeping has been some of the best goalkeeping I've ever seen. 50 matches played, 4,500 minutes, played every single minute of every single game. Quick little dip into the loan farm to show you how it's going. You can see that this is the sheer number of players we've now got out on loan, which is looking pretty good in there too. Semlish has done really well this season, but of course Axelson with 10 assists. You can see that Petrosov's got 39 goals for Mezhkovej in their, I believe, promotion charge as well. Jordan Ross with 25 for Kekschmidt. Krolles managed 21 for Kijvala as well in the top flight too. Financially, things are obscene. £33 million in the bank. But as you'll notice over on the right-hand side here, well, let me show you on a better screen. £16.7 million transfer budget. It was actually 22 million, but I moved a load of it into wage budget as well, and I've also made a quick couple of signings as well. It is a ridiculous amount of money that we've got to spend over this summer, and we've been doing a lot of scouting and finding some insane players. So yeah, hope you'll join me for that as well. But it's going to be a hell of a season. So yes, that's what we're doing over on stream right now, doing this transfer window, going through the 300 players that I've got ready for us to have a little look at, one of whom I've actually already picked up, a certain Mr. Sucky of the Slovak parish. So if you know about him and you saw him last stream, he's even better than you thought he was. So yes, if you want to join us for that, of course, please do. Drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you chaps and chapesses over on the stream. Hold your gun, capybara, bye-bye.